Welcome, everyone, to the PFF Fantasy Podcast IDP edition. I'm John Macri, and I'll be going over the top 10-ish IDP takeaways from Week 10, where we got a lot of exciting finishes in these games here for the NFL, and hopefully you good folks tuning into the show walked away comfortable and stress-free in your Week 10 win. I know the week's not over yet, but either way, there's still a month of the fantasy football regular season remaining, which means there is still plenty to go over and kind of sort out as we continue to fine tune our rosters in order to make that championship run. So we'll lock into some of the key like linebacker situations and other situations as well that I'll highlight in here to best set our lineups going forward and attack the waiver wire as well heading into week 11. And if there are, situations again or players that I don't cover in here that you want to hear more about, feel free to shout them out in the comments and I'll try to get to them as we go. Otherwise, I'll include them in the IDP fantasy report, which will be out Tuesday around noon. Eastern time, that is. That'll have all the snap counts, data, notes, waiver wire targets for the entire week, which you can get access to with a PFF Plus subscription, and you'll get access to as well as IDP rankings, our other fantasy rankings and tools, and our many pieces of content that we put out on the site on a daily basis. So make sure you got a PFF Plus subscription. But yeah, let's get right into it here. And we'll start with the Minnesota Vikings. Now, as we were expecting this week, Blake Cashman returned to the lineup. He missed 3 games with turf toe. We talked on the preview show, Tripp and I, how the Vikings coaching staff might have been like frustrated, by the time the amount of time that it took Cashman to get back in the lineup. But nonetheless, he was back in the lineup this week. Now, there was a point very early in the game where it appeared that like Cashman might have re-aggravated his injury because he didn't play the entire second drive, and Ivan Pace played all 9 of those snaps. So that's why the snap share is a little wonky this week. Cashman playing 80%, Ivan Pace playing 59%. Now, I think they only played like 55. I want to say, I could pull it up quickly here. Actually, they only played 44 defensive snaps, which is insanely low for a defense. So 9 snaps taken away from that is going to make a huge difference one way or the other. So Ivan Pace getting all 9 of those snaps bumped his snap share up quite a bit, which isn't saying much because that's 59%. And Cashman's dropped down quite a bit, a whole 20% of snaps, that just by missing that one drive, right? So it seems like he was okay after that because he came back into the game and back to his usual usage, playing 100% of the snaps. And then Ivan Pace was only used in sub-package situations. Ultimately, again, snap shares 80% to 59%. We could expect, obviously, Cashman to be higher than that, Pace to probably be a bit lower than that kind of going forward here. Both guys luckily got a sack in this game and were productive on that small amount of snaps, which obviously gave us, like as IDP managers, a nice boost in production. And for those managers who maybe weren't aware that Ivan Pace was going to see a snap downgrade, it was probably gives you a nice cushion to kind of find a replacement here in time for week 11 as well. All right. Actually, speaking of returning players from injury, the Atlanta Falcons linebacker core saw the return of Troy Anderson this week, which marks only the second time all season that Troy Anderson and Nate Landman were in there together. The only other time being back in week 1. So definitely worth kind of looking at the usage here, in my opinion, just to kind of see how things shook out. Because last time we saw these guys, Landman was playing the early downs, Anderson was playing the later downs, Ellis continued to play every down. So this week, the way it shook out was a little bit different. It was more of kind of a toned down rotation, because there were drives where Anderson worked the later downs a couple of times, but he did get a chance to play drives alone next to Caden Ellis when Landman did not get out there. But that was just a couple of times as well. It wasn't a constant throughout the game. And then we didn't see Anderson at all in the fourth quarter on defense. So this could just be the team easing Anderson back in after missing a bunch of time with an injury. And then as far as the fourth quarter goes, he got a little banged up and didn't come back in after that. So potentially re-injured himself. Not sure if that'll cause him to miss time or what, but it was clear that, if he's healthy, the team wanted to work him into the mix and did not want the full-time role for Nate Landman. So this will definitely be something to monitor. Would be a downgrade to Landman. Obviously, we'll see what happens with Troy Anderson, and we'll monitor injury reports again. But just something to kind of keep an eye on there, as we expected. Landman's usage kind of being decreased with Anderson back in the lineup. All right, let's talk about the Sunday night football game that we just watched. The Houston Texans and the Detroit Lions. The Lions winning it on a last-second field goal. But we'll start with the Houston Texans, where we have another returning linebacker. Aiz Al Sher gets back in the fold this week alongside his old running mate, Hanky Two Toes, aka Hanky, aka Henry To'o. I really can't say his real name, but it was good to see Aiz Al Sher back in the mix. It wasn't obviously a perfect return, because in the first half, he was being taken off the field on some of the obvious passing situations, though not all of them. And luckily, it only seemed to be a thing in the first half and not the entire game. Al Sher highlighted on the broadcast by the boss, Chris Collinsworth, quite a few times, highlighting his level of play. And hopefully the Texans kind of realize that this is one of our better players on defense as well, and stopped with the shenanigans of taking him off the field. It really only ended up being, I think, 4 snaps, but it was clearly intentional, at least in the first half. Now, I'm not sure if that was maybe the team's way of also easing him back into the lineup after missing time with injury, just like what we were talking about with Troy Anderson. But probably nothing, to be honest, considering they went back to him being full-time in the second half. Wasn't a massive blow to his overall snap share. Ended up playing, 94%. So once it was all said and done, just something to kind of keep an eye on. And then, for what it was worth, when he was off the field, they usually just replaced him with an additional safety on those third downs that he was off the field. Not Devin White. Devin White just played in base on base downs. Their safeties, by the way, was a whole other mess, because Jimmy Ward and Kalen Bullock rotated drives quite a bit and took turns being that third down option, where Eric Murray stayed full-time. But I'll cover that in the IDP fantasy report. For now, Aiz Al Sher is the more IDP relevant player, and we'll watch the situation again next to see if it was just a 1-week anomaly, which I suspect it will be. On the other side of that Sunday night football game, the Detroit Lions gave us another full-time Jack Campbell game. This time, he played 100% of snaps. So Malcolm Rodriguez was inactive again, so that definitely helped. But for now, this has been great for Jack Campbell, even if it didn't lead to like a massive IDP performance this week. I think we had like 7 tackles. I think maybe he had a pass breakup in there, but it's a positive and definitely something that we've been waiting for since he was drafted. I won't spend too much time on this one, because it was a big part of last week's recap episode, but just wanted to include it in here as just a follow-up, because it was like a quieter day on the on the score sheet, but it was also his best snap share of the past 3 weeks as well. So really promising stuff there for Jack Campbell. All right, obviously we're back to our usual Jacksonville Jaguars linebacker update, because it was a very productive game for Devin Lloyd. Foye Oluokun also got an interception in this game, but the question is going to be, how much did they play and not play this week, as it's fluctuated a fair bit throughout the season. And while we finally got the 100% snap game from Foye Oluokun that we've been waiting for, it felt like maybe we were getting there after the last 2 weeks since his return from injury, where the first week back he played all but 1 drive, and then last week he played every drive, but he came off for a few snaps here and there. And then finally this week he's back to 100% for the first time this season, by the way. And now maybe, just maybe, we can leave him kind of locked in as an LB1. Not that, we were benching him or anything crazy, but because of that rotation, there was at least some hesitance in fully embracing him as the LB1 that he was drafted to be, right? We're remembering that snaps matter more than anything else for IDP. And now that Foye has his snaps back, we can definitely go on and trust him comfortably going forward. Hopefully, 84 snaps. That was a lot of snaps for the defense as well. I just talked about Minnesota only had 44, so almost double for the Jacksonville defense. So they had opportunities to rest him, and they chose not to. So that was really great to see. Meanwhile, Devin Lloyd, who led the team in total tackles, only actually played 77% of snaps, which is fine for him. That's about the range we expect him to be in now. At least, for us, there's been some consistency now in that playing time, which is probably the most we can ask for at this point with this defense. He'll be in that LB3-ish range most weeks. All right, somewhat interesting shift here in Denver. Last week, we talked about how Quan Alexander had overtaken Justin Sternad as the team's LB2, which did happen snap-wise. However, Alexander was inactive for this game because apparently he didn't have any more practice squad elevations left. I believe you're only allowed 3 before you have to sign them to the 53-man roster, if I remember correctly. So instead, the team called up Zach Cunningham, another IDP linebacker ghost of Christmas past, but Cunningham didn't factor in at all. So Sternad was able to resume his LB2 role basically unbothered by some old head linebacker sniping away his playing time. So that was really nice to see. It only ended up being about 62% of snaps, but that was still better than whatever it was last week. I think around 25%, right? So, if you're in deeper leagues and holding or adding Sternad, which you can do, I would just keep an eye on whether or not the Broncos sign Quan Alexander to the 53-man roster or not, because it seems he's at least right now the only real threat to Sternad's LB2 role, and he's still technically lurking in the shadows of the team's practice squad. So otherwise, Sternad back to being kind of a fine play in deeper leagues. All right, let's go to the Los Angeles Chargers linebackers next, where I want to update this group because I neglected to update this one last week, and I got questions about it. So I wanted to just go into more detail here because Diane Henley was once again an every down linebacker for the 3rd week in a row. Junior Colson's now on IR, but Henley, another great game, leading the team in total tackles with 13, and he landed a sack. Now, really, we could continue to lock him into our weekly lineups as like a fringe LB1, LB2, however you want to approach him, but playing 100% of snaps in the league's most zone heavy defense as well, by the way, is just great for his tackle efficiency and his potential going forward. Denzel Perriman only played 53% of snaps. I think he played just like 1/3 down the entire game. Denzel Perriman, it was like a 1/3 and short, but this Chargers defense is interesting because it has become more of a one linebacker defense now, where they're happy to roll out 3 safeties with a lot of dime personnel, where not just Derwin James and Alohi Gilman being full-time players, but Elijah Molden as well, playing 89% of the snaps, mostly at deep safety, along with Alohi Gilman, which allows Derwin to kind of roam and play in the slot, in the box, on the line, which is something we see in Minnesota with guys like Josh Metellus alongside Harrison Smith and Cam Bynum, right? And it looks like these past 3 games now, we've seen the Chargers really lean into that same deployment. So I'd say there's a pretty good sample size to let us kind of reset our expectations for who we expect to be out there on a weekly basis with this Chargers group. And Molden becomes an option now in deeper leagues because of it, which is really nice. So he actually had 8 tackles in this game, so that was pretty good. It was second on the team behind only Diane Henley. So interesting shift there for the Chargers. It's been 3 weeks in a row of this, but sometimes these things are game plan specific or personnel specific. But it's now again three weeks, nice sample size. We could kind of expect this defense to look like this going forward here, barring injuries and stuff like that. One of the other linebacker situations that I wanted to update, and honestly might be the last time we cover them if it remains this way, the Tennessee Titans, where yes, Jerome Baker was active for the 2nd straight week, but also like last week, he did not get on the field as a defender at all in this game. So Jack Gibbons looking locked in as a full-time player, like we kind of figured after last week, but the confidence in Gibbons, I think, just continues to grow for us. And the whole reason that he made the breakout list for me before they traded for Ernest Jones was that he's a really effective tackler for IDP, and there's opportunity here, right? He's not the best linebacker in the league for sure, like NFL terms, but neither is Kenneth Murray. The difference being that between the two is that Gibbons is at least efficient with his opportunities, and that's why he's led the team in total tackles 3 straight games now. So Jack Gibbons, definitely starting to feel a lot better about him now with Jerome Baker not factoring in even for a snap. So the team obviously clearly telling us that they prefer Jack Gibbons in these games going forward. Okay, an update out of New England now. And well, we may as well cover the linebackers and the safeties because there's noteworthy info for both. Starting with the linebackers, where Christian Ellis was out for this game, Raekwon McMillan was released this week. So Jelani Tavai led the way for the second straight game, but he played 100% of snaps this week, while Sione Takitaki played as the LB2 at 47%. Takitaki also got hurt in this game. It was like later in the third quarter, so he didn't finish the game. I mean, New England, they're bleeding linebackers at this point, so it makes sense that Tavai played 100% of snaps this week. He probably will again. It helps that he got a sack as well this week to boost that production. Last week, I think it was the interception, right? So he's getting the odd big play on top of it. I wouldn't expect that to continue, obviously, but 100% of snaps is what we're looking for our linebackers. So Tavai could potentially be that guy, considering that they're dealing with all these injuries and then obviously McMillan being released. So as far as the other New England IDPs kind of worth talking about, and no, it's not the pass rushers who put up 9 sacks against Caleb Williams. That'll be a conversation for another day, but it's the safeties that we're going to have to talk about because Kyle Duggar was out again this week. So if there was going to be an opportunity for Marte Mapu to regain some IDP value, this was it. Unfortunately, it was essentially the opposite of that because Mapu became third among a pretty heavy rotation for the New England safeties, playing behind Jalen Hawkins and behind Del Pettis. Only got on the field for 24 of a possible 60 snaps, so a 40% snap share. That's kind of an IDP death knell for a defensive back. We're not going to be interested in that at all. We had already been considering Mapu as a sit after the last couple of weeks where he was playing mostly deep. Now he's about as droppable as it gets with that snap share, right? And then the expectation that Kyle Duggar will be back soon only really pushes him further down the depth chart. So we're good to move on from Marte Mapu now. That was fun while it lasted for a couple of weeks, but this happens every year, right? There's guys that pop up and flash and become waiver darlings, but it's usually just a flash in the pan. So Marte Mapu, we're moving on for now. We'll find plenty of other defensive backs to replace him. All right, let's get some cornerback talk in here because this week our CB1 on the year, Alontae Taylor of the New Orleans Saints, has, I guess, some reason for concern here, at least, as far as if he'll be able to hold on to that CB1 status going forward. It's not impossible, but some concern, right? So the second week in a row now, Taylor has been kept almost exclusively to the outside instead of splitting his time between the slot and out wide, which is what he was doing for the first few games that without Paulson Adebo. But unfortunately, the team has kind of decided on keeping him locked to the outside now, which does matter for his upside and potential to put up those consistent CB1 numbers. Now, he did have a strong game this week at 9 total tackles. That was great. But keep in mind, they were playing the Falcons, who are giving up the 3rd most tackles per game to the cornerback position on the year. So this was already a very favorable matchup for him to still deliver. It just might not be that favorable every week. And then you take him out of the slot, there's, it removes some of his upside as well. And that's kind of the other part of things to keep in mind here with Alontae Taylor is that he's been in on 5 sacks this season because he was working in the slot where he's getting more of those blitz opportunities. He had 28 blitz attempts on the season through the first 8 games when he was playing as the primary slot. So 3.5 attempts per game. Over these last 2 games, when they've moved him to the outside, 0 blitz attempts in those 2 games, which just eliminates a big part of his game, right? So Actually, it's worth noting too, the player that benefits from this movement is Ugo Amadi, who played 100% of snaps today, almost all of them out of the slot. And he was the one to get a couple blitz attempts himself, also posted 9 total tackles. Now, I don't think Amadi will play 100% of snaps every week because of that nickel corner role that we've talked so much about. But they played the Falcons this week, who play the highest rate of 11 personnel in the league, which keeps those nickel cornerbacks on the field. That just won't be the case every week, but we'll have some matchup-based value for sure. Just being that the Saints slot, which has already been one of the better spots for IDP this season. So we'll keep an eye out for Ugo Amadi, as a matchup based play if you're streaming cornerbacks. For next week, for example, he's playing the Cleveland Browns. Browns are sixth in 11 personnel rate in the league at about 77%. So that could be another nice matchup for Ugo Amadi and could be a potential decent streamer for next week. Okay, lastly, to round out the top takeaways here, I wanted to quickly look at the Pittsburgh Steelers edge rushers because it was a quiet game from TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith. Both guys were kept off the score sheet for the most part, with I think TJ Watt landing just 2 QB hits and a pass breakup. Alex Highsmith just 1 QB hit. Meanwhile, newly acquired Preston Smith joins the fold and immediately gets the sack. So that was kind of the reason I wanted to highlight this one, not for like the low-hanging fruit to say just be patient on TJ Watt. He'll have better games, yada yada. That would just be stating an obvious that I'd be embarrassed about, but really just to highlight the usage in case it was more of a concern that Preston Smith may have cut into the workhorse snap shares of TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith, which he did not. So TJ Watt played 88% of snaps. That's an amazing number for edge rushers. Alex Highsmith played 80%. Preston Smith played 36%. Now, unfortunately, Highsmith did roll his ankle, which was disgusting to look at. That happened on his 1 QB hit in this game. You hate to see that because Highsmith has been really good this season. Again, he's just missed time with injury now, which will definitely looks like it's going to happen again now. Just a matter of how much time he'll miss. I'm sure, he'll get an MRI or whatever when they get back home. But with Highsmith out for however long that'll be, Preston Smith should get a decent bump in snaps and to an extent Nick Herbig as well. But I'd really expect this to be Preston Smith, as it's kind of the exact reason that they acquired him was for depth and someone who can handle a starter's workload in that defense, because they saw what Jeremiah Moon offered and it was not going to work. So now they have a more capable weapon to step up, and he'll be in consideration for waivers as well, depending on Highsmith's injury and how long he'll be out. Hopefully not for long. So that's going to do it for me this week and for our main IDP takeaways. I wish we had the Rams Dolphins game in for nothing else but the Rams safety / linebacker situation, which I'm excited to see if the Jalen McCullough situation was just a mirage, or is that something that we can exploit for IDP going forward? I know I have him in a couple starting lineups and in a few spots, so hoping it's real and not a mirage, but we'll find out soon enough. The Monday Night Football game is just around the corner. Anyways, I'll be sure to break it down in the IDP Fantasy Report, as well as everything else that it will be out on Tuesday afternoon, and then we'll be going game by game in the IDP Start Sit show later in the week, and we'll cover a lot of that stuff in there as well. So thank you all for tuning in. If you'd be so kind to like and subscribe to the channel, I really do appreciate it. I can't thank you guys enough. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, a 5-star written review also goes a long way for us. So again, thank you guys so much for doing that. And for those that have done so already, really, really appreciate you guys. Also appreciate the PFF data collection team continuing to be the best team in the multiverse, for whom this information is just not possible. So thank you to all those guys and gals. And as always, for you guys, feel free to ask questions in the comments. And until next time, peace out.